Welcome to Missed Opportunities for Good, the podcast where we open up the space to have conversations about trends and campaigns at the intersection of marketing, advertising, and impact.
Hi, I'm Alana Ficalora.
Hey, I'm Steph Belsky.
We're social impact strategists, colleagues, and friends who are on a mission to revolutionize the industry we love.
Listen, today there's a lot of virtue signaling, greenwashing, cause washing, or companies just saying nothing out of fear of getting it wrong.
Whether it's a moment or a movement, it still has to be real. It has to be authentic and aligned with the brand, not just performative. It's about the action being taken that goes along with the messaging.
So we're here to highlight who's doing it well, what could be better, and how companies can stop leaving money and the potential for real social change on the table.
Our guest today on Creative Conversations is Lauryn Nwankpa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, happy to have you here today.
Lauryn is the managing director of Brand Citizens, a strategic social impact consultancy based in Los Angeles. Brand Citizens is on a mission to playbook how brands live in the world in ways that are modern and magnetic. Love that. Previously, Lauryn led social impact at industry disrupting brands such as Headspace and recently IPO'd Dave. She has advised startups such as Blue Studios and Omatachi and is a proud board member of Charger Help.
Welcome to Missed Opportunities for Good, Lauryn. Let's get to know you a bit better.
Hey.
Our favorite question to start with is, why do you do what you do without saying what you do? Even though we just told everyone what you do.
Fundamentally, I do believe that everyone just has to do a little bit more to build the world that we all deserve. I think for far too long, folks have been able to kind of, reject accountability or not hold themselves accountable to dreaming up the world that we really all do deserve. And the status quo really isn't it. This isn't working for so many people. I think we've seen how real that is, kind of in this post-COVID, I don't even know if it's post-COVID, but in this like post-2020 world that we find ourselves in, where the social contracts and the institutions that we were all kind of led to really, grew up socialized to really believe in, were really crumbling around us. And we didn't really have a ton of guidance as to how to kind of like fix those things. And frankly, there are certain sectors that I think that have tons of resources and innovation and ideas and really amazing talent that should be doing more. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the private sector, specifically working in tech and with brands, because brands have had such an amazing resonance in our culture for so long. We didn't have horsepower until, an advertising agency came up with that concept. There's so many parts of our lives that have been informed by these thinkers, these advertisers. So with that comes a lot of responsibility, and with that comes a lot of purpose, that can really be revealed. So yeah, that's kind of why I do what I do without saying what I do.
Yes.
Well done.
Very well
I love
done.
that though. So true.
Thanks.
Okay, our next question,
use all that help,
which we love to ask our guests, is what first drew you to impact? And I know you sort of alluded to that a little bit, but would love to hear more about that journey.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who has ever heard me either talk on a panel or on a podcast before, I should probably remix the story because it's a tale as old as time now, but I'm one of those, what they call geriatric, and I'm putting air quotes as I say that because it's rude and disrespectful, but I'm a geriatric millennial who a ton of my life, pretty much since like adolescence on, has been informed by these really wild kind of unprecedented moments in our history, whether it was 9/11, my freshman year in high school, Hurricane Katrina, my freshman year in college. Certainly as I was graduating in 2009 from college, the world economy collapsed, and everything that everyone said that I should do in order for the world to be my oyster, get good grades and go to the best schools you can go to. None of that mattered, and I was just frustrated. And I was like, and we put so many eggs in our collective society puts so many eggs in our nonprofit and philanthropic basket, which is an incredible body of work. I am so impressed every day with such amazing work that the nonprofit sector is doing. But we can't rely on just that sector to kind of save us, especially when a lot of it is predicated on the wealth built by, folks that might have gotten their money from like ill-gotten means, and they're like, here's a little $10 donation over here and, save the world with that.
Yeah.
So I was just frustrated with this kind of feeling, this imbalance that I kept seeing in the world, and not enough people that I thought had the power and the resources to do anything about it. And frankly, we're creating some of the problems that we were seeing. We're getting off scot-free. Yeah. And I also I'd done a ton of work in the nonprofit sector. And like I said, I love the work that's happening. I was working closely and related to education spaces. And I always have a huge spot in my heart for educators and folks that are like bringing up the next generation of folks. But we are not doing that sector any service if we're not figuring out how to properly, fund it, how to properly drive efficiencies there, how to cross collaborate within the private sector and the public sectors, and really find solutions that are actually going to drive things like equity and food security and save our planet. I mean, there's like real problems that we're dealing with that we literally can't kick down the line anymore. And so I was feeling those pressures kind of early in my life and realized that there might be something I could do about it. And frankly, I have a ton of student loans now. And I wanted to see, I was like, the nonprofit sector is great, but I'm going to see what's going on over here in tech so I could maybe, get a few stock options and get a couple dollars to pay down some of these loans because I don't have a trust fund. So that's kind of that was my
you don't?
I do not have a trust fund, and I am disgusted by that. And I don't understand how this happened. I'm still waiting for a random rich uncle to come out of the woodwork and be like, just kidding, Lauryn. I just wanted to make sure you had, you wouldn't go crazy when I gave you this $100 million, but that still hasn't happened. So yeah, back to work, I guess.
But for good. So
right,
exactly. For good.
I think we're putting the money where the mouth is in like a different direction, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's so interesting, even just coming off of, Black Friday and Giving Tuesday and all of the things. Like, it just made me think about, I wonder if anyone's ever actually calculated the difference in the amount of money that gets spent on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is now seems like 3 weeks long, all of those things collectively compared to Giving Tuesday.
Right.
I know.
Where after everyone spent all their money, all the nonprofits come back being like, hey, can I get some?
Please,
anybody please before the end of the year? $10, anything? And it's just such a shame.
My inbox. Yeah, no, my inbox right now, it is Giving Tuesday,
yes.
And it is, my inbox is flooded. And I'm like, here's $5 here. Here's $5 here. I just spent $30 on a friend's kids popcorn fundraiser. Yeah. I'm like, I don't have any more. I'm done. But it is interesting. I'm affiliated with an amazing nonprofit, a scholarship organization called the Jackie Robinson Foundation. I was a scholar and I'm an alumni now, and I try to give back as much as I can. And they were doing amazing fundraising for the Jackie Robinson Museum that's in New York, and obviously for the scholars that come through the program. They've been doing so for almost like 40 years now, probably a little bit more than that. And I remember asking one of the managers of the organization, I'm so curious as to what we get from that little button on Amazon. Yeah. It's like, if you buy through this little,
Smile.
And they were like,
the Smile
program, which they took away.
Yeah.
They said like, it was literal pennies.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I was like, and every time I would shop on Amazon, I would use the Smile, and I was like, they must be getting at least
something,
$50,000 from me specifically, but no, it wasn't. So it's just like, I think that's such a, it is. It's such a good example of the performative nature of, and the kind of limitations of philanthropic kind of endeavors in order to kind of solve real problems. My kind of thesis on impact is, especially for the private sector, is how are you solving a real problem through the delivery of your goods and services, you know? And if you're not, then you probably shouldn't be in business. And I know that's kind of radical to say in this like capitalistic society that we live in, but really let's, you know, there's real value that we're creating for shareholders, but like we should also be figuring out how to generate that real value for everyone else as well.
Yeah.
And also how to mitigate risk and harm for the environments, for the communities that we find ourselves in, for workers, for consumers, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're not doing that, then you've got a lot of work to do to kind of reconfigure your organization to be able to do that.
And ultimately, you won't be in business for very long because,
listen,
well,
okay?
if you don't adapt to this world, the world's changing either way. So you got to be ready for where it's going.
Let me tell you, these Gen Z and Gen Alpha and all these babies that are coming up now they do not play. You know, they're like, I don't care if, like, I'm not going to put my money in a brand or a business that I don't believe in. And it's like, we used to say that with like a kind of like chuckle, like, oh, that's cute. But like, no, it's real, you know? And we have millennials that are also in a place, again, like I said, geriatric millennials, you know, that are finding themselves, you know, really having to make choices. Like, where am I putting my dollars? I unfortunately had to make a purchase on Amazon. I'm so embarrassed to say this yesterday. I'm so embarrassed to say it, but I'm not going to cut it out because I'm going to stand on mine. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I had to make a purchase for a birthday party that I'm going to that's like Great Gatsby themed, which is all, you know, there's
the irony of all of that
in there. Yeah, there's irony in all of that. And I was like, maybe I should just wait till tomorrow so I'm not participating in this cyber month. You know, anyway, so don't let me get off track, but all the things.
I love all of that. And that's so real. I feel guilty every time I have to click the Amazon button too. I try so hard not to use it. I unsubscribe from Prime. And then when it came to buy my turkey at Whole Foods, I was like, hey,
you have your QR code ready to go?
Someone's Prime code so I can save some money on my turkey. Thanks. But I want to buy the organic one. So
listen, these are choices.
We got to do what we can.
Listen, but we're doing our best. We're doing our best.
So I did pay for the Prime membership, but my brother did.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. Fixing consumers and one person at a time.
That's called mutual aid. Okay. That's what that's called.
Okay. Exactly. I mean, you kind of started maybe to touch on this, but maybe there's different issues area you'd like to acknowledge. But what issue area or areas are you most passionate about? Could still be education or anything else. And if there's any organizations you'd also like to highlight, feel free to share.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, there's so many things. But one thing, as you mentioned, I started my career in tech at Headspace. And it was just such a phenomenal time in my life. It was a phenomenal time for the company. It was such a robust time to kind of think about what it meant for something like this to be in market where you're offering this like digital offering for someone to have a better relationship with their mind. And since they've grown into even more robust offerings, and my kind of remit was to figure out how to operationalize social impacts and drive impact in a way that was, again, really tied to the kind of like delivery of this service or product, and really think beyond just philanthropy, frankly. So we built this platform to provide access to Headspace, and it was still for free, but for folks that were helping other people. So we started with educators, and then we expanded to young people, and that really opened my eyes. We were doing partnerships with a ton of organizations, and I really kind of got involved in the ecosystem in a way that I was so proud of. And I kind of stuck with it because it just, it just reminded me, I had started my own journey with a therapist not long after I started restarted a journey with a therapist not long after. It's a lifelong journey. And, had my own, everyone has their own relationship to their mental health, and everyone's trying to figure out how to break generational curses and understand their mommy issues or, like set boundaries and, or people are dealing with like real brain chemistry challenges. And so it was just a really awesome opportunity for me to understand the magnitude of everyone's relationship with their mind and with their mental health, and also just the intersectionality that kind of informs that whole entire space. And so I've been working with an organization called Mindful Philanthropy for the last couple of years. They are an amazing organization that brings family offices, high net worth individuals, private foundation dollars to really awesome innovations around all things mental health and well-being. So that can be anything from conversations around what's happening in the foster care healthcare system all the way to, additional medicinal uses for psychedelics to treat schizophrenia and anything in between. And it's wonderful to kind of see how they are not only building a foundation of education for folks to understand the breadth and the width of this space, and also help folks that might not have had an lived experience with kind of some of the ways in which systems of oppression, grind folks down to dust. They might not have had that personal experience, but they can start to understand how if you don't solve for education, if you don't solve for housing, if you don't solve for jobs, if you don't solve for maternal health, all of these things impact, our collective mental health. And then it doesn't actually leave a ton of room for us to really be thinking about innovations around things that truly are brain chemistry issues, because we're trying to solve public health issues, and the money gets diluted. So it's a really interesting space. And I think having an understanding of the mental health space kind of helps us kind of also tap into some of the other areas that are in dire need as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Amazing.
We'll definitely have to share that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Love it. I was just so enthralled with everything you were saying.
Zoned out captivation.
I love it.
Oh man. Okay, so you just the mental health piece of it all. I mean, you were at the forefront of that. And I love this organization that you're talking about. I think it's mental health is everything. Huge mental health advocate. Yeah. So thank you for everything you do in that space. I guess along similar lines of that is, what's an impactful project you've worked on either recently or in your career that you're really proud of? I mean, you've done a lot, so there's a lot to be proud of.
I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that, because sometimes we forget to remind ourselves, all the things that we've done, and you just quickly move on to the next thing. Yeah. And sometimes you forget to take inventory and pat yourself on the back a little bit, and say, oh yeah, I did that. I think, I'm really proud of the work that we did at Headspace. I did a lot of really cool stuff when I was in fintech at this company called Dave, helping to kind of think about what does it mean to kind of provide a financial instrument to folks who have been, systematically kind of marginalized from the banking industry and frankly preyed upon. So there was a lot of cool stuff there. Yeah. But I think my role here now at Brand Citizens has been really interesting, because it's really pushed me deeper into kind of my creative side of my brain, as well as the business development side of my brain, which is and I think one of the things that I've been really excited about is how we help brands reimagine why they need to kind of think about impact in a different way, and the risks and chances we take in order to do that. And so one of the things that we've been doing a ton of lately, we're a super tiny organization, but we exist within a larger realm of sister agencies and a larger holding company. So we have anyone from creative agencies all the way to PR and everything in between that we can kind of draw on and cast, if you will, because the work that we do is so strategic and it's very far upstream. And if you think about branding and marketing and advertising, you're like Super Bowl ads, or this big billboard that's on the side of my apartment building or something like that. But there's a lot of thinking and work that has to go on, before that. And to your point, it has to be thoughtful, it has to be authentic, and it has to resonate with consumers, and it has to matter based on what it is that you're selling or promoting. So one of the things that we've had a lot of conversation with brands is two things. One is, you say you want this, you say you want credit in the market for what you're doing, whether it's purpose driven or impact driven, or frankly, just, consumer driven, but you're doing stuff that's like, not newsworthy. You're doing things that are, just like a rusty playbook that, no longer resonates with folks. It's not interesting. It's not tied, you're not leveraging strategies that actually kind of resonate in, 2023 and beyond. So we help them think through, if you might be looking for a creative agency, but you actually might need to rethink, a lot of the strategy and your purpose kind of infrastructure in order to kind of come to market with a fresh look and feel and brand identity around purpose. And so we kind of bring people back upstream through these kind of like reimagining of the briefs and reimagining of the RFPs in a way that's like really bold. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes people are like, I just want a creative agency to do a Super Bowl ad, period. I don't want to do anything else. But it's been really fun to kind of help folks like think differently. And the work that we do spans across an organization. So we're not just working with the CMO and their team. We're working with the chief legal officer and the people team and strategy and product, and sometimes the CSR and ESG teams. And
so important.
Our favorite parts of the work are when we bring all those people together and we say, hey, chief legal officer, you get to imagine and be creative in this moment. What would you say? I know you're the person that gives us the parameters as well, but you know what we can and cannot do, but let's just dream for a second. And just giving people that opportunity is so cool. And it's always so rich, and I'm always blown away at all the amazing ideas that come from that. And then we help them operationalize that. And then they feel like they have their fingerprints on it, you know? So even if you're the chief legal officer, or the chief people officer, you've now informed this kind of purpose strategy that includes the talent, it includes customers and stakeholders, it includes distribution partners, et cetera. It includes your merchandising strategies and things like that. So people really feel like it's a robust and integrated part of the brand, as opposed to just like a marketing gimmick, you know? And I think that's a really interesting and important work. And I'm really proud of that, because, you know, a lot of brands either think they've got it all figured out and they don't. And a lot of brands, you know, it takes a lot of personal work to kind of go through that. And a lot of stakeholders, you know, kind of sticking their neck out to make sure that they're bringing the teams along in service of purpose and impact at their company. And I think the flip side of that too is that, you know, we see a lot of brands, especially going into 2024, it's going to be a really wild time kind of in American society as we come upon this election. And I won't go too deep into politics, but I think one thing that, you know, that's for another podcast, but one thing that we can, you know, we're seeing is that a lot of brands still think that they can be agnostic, you know, in a lot of these major issues. And certainly, you know, I don't know if Charmin needs to get into conversations around gender identity, but maybe they do. I don't know.
Like, maybe,
you know,
they do. They sell toilet paper.
Maybe they should. Maybe they should. You know, I mean,
for bathrooms and all the conversations we've had about accessible bathrooms, maybe they should. I don't know.
Maybe they should. And the thing that we really help people grapple with is like, you can no longer kind of sit on the sidelines of what's happening in culture. But no matter what you do, you have to be able to defend it. You have to be able to defend your agnostic, you know, sensibilities, or you have to be able to defend why you're taking a certain stance. And frankly, when you do that, you also have to be ready to engage in the conversation that inherently elevates it into a place, so that we're not, you know, arguing about people's humanity, or we're not arguing tit for tat about minute details that aren't actually relevant. Let's elevate conversations. Let's take that responsibility that brands do have, you know, in terms of the affinity that they have with folks, and bring and elevate the conversations in ways that are actually much more meaningful, and really be able to stand by that, you know, and be able to weather the kind of backlash that might come with that, you know, on either side. Now, personally speaking, I'm, you know, most excited to work for and will only work with brands that I think are on the right side of history and on the right side of like, you know, human rights issues and progress and people's dignity and identities and all that sort of thing. So you probably won't see me working with brands that are like, nah, we're trying to go backwards. But I think even those brands should figure out how to defend their actions in a way that I guess resonates with whoever they're, you know, selling to. But that's none of my business. But, you know, anyway, all that to say, I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on with brands to help them really kind of come into this, you know, 2023, 2024 and beyond world in a way that really resonates, in a way that really authentically demonstrates their commitment to
Lauryn, I just have to say, you know, you're building the world that everyone wants to live in. And that is not an easy thing to do. Like the fact that you are breaking down these silos in companies that typically are extremely siloed is tremendous work. Tremendous work.
Thank you.
And to be able to bring everyone back together through purpose and through creativity. That, I mean, you're living the dream, my friend. This is incredible work.
I really appreciate that. And I think to your point, it's like, everyone has it in them. Everyone wants to do, maybe not everyone, but most people have it in them. Most people want to do good. They just don't know how.
Yep.
And you get kind of caught in the constraints of, or the red tape or the bureaucracy of the institutions that you're a part of. And sometimes it does take that little outside voice and that nimble kind of hot pink team, which we call ourselves. All of our branding and stuff is hot pink.
I was like, please tell me you all walk in hot pink.
we are we're like very hot pink, like that. I should get some sweatshirts made for us that say like brand citizens, but we come in and we're truth tellers, and we are a really diverse team, and we come from all these different backgrounds. We have all these experiences, and sometimes I come in and people are like, who's this? I'm a Black woman who, like, I think looks younger than I actually am. If my face is made up, not right now, but so people don't tend to take me seriously. People don't take me seriously,
Yeah.
But and then I have a co-managing director who's the most wonderful human on this planet, Jim Moriarty.
Jim is such a legend.
Yeah, he is a legend, and I keep I'm so grateful to be in this work with him. I'm just so proud to like call him a partner, and he just gets it, and he understands his own privilege, and there's zero ego with him, but he's a white guy with white hair, and sometimes you need the white guy with white hair to kind of break down some of those barriers so that the Black girl with blonde braids can come in and tell people what they need to hear. So it's just this beautiful kind of magic that we've got going here that doesn't work for every brand, obviously, but when it does, it's absolutely phenomenal. We're so proud of the work that we're able to do. So thank you. I appreciate that though, Stephanie.
That's amazing. What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now that you're willing to share?
It's so funny. I was thinking about this, and then I was like, oh, I'll think of something by the time I'll like narrow it down to one thing. I mean, I think the space, it's weird because I'm like an OG in this space, and I still look around and I'm like, am I an adult? Like, am I the grown up in the room? Like, this is weird. Like, people are looking to me to, but I've been doing this work for, 7 years now. And I remember when I was at Headspace and I told Rich, the then CEO and founder, I was like, hey, you should make me the head of social impact. And he's like, what the hell is social impact? And I'm like, well, let me explain it. And I was just getting my master's of social entrepreneurship from Marshall at USC. And, he was worried that, his brand would be perceived as this like social enterprise that was only like nonprofit, it was like a nonprofit. And he was worried about the perception of, he was like, if we just sell our products, that's doing good. And I'm like, yes, but we should operationalize that. And we should position that in a way that's, is moat building and is defendable and is like inspirational. And and that doesn't feel like that long ago, know? And so totally. I still have folks that are coming to me that are either graduating from the program that I graduated from or interested in kind of embarking on a career in social impact. And they ask me, well, how do you get into this? And I'm kind of the best thing I can tell them is like, find a brand that it really inspires you and then try to build it from the inside. And that's not really, that's not the best, if I were listening to that, I'd be like, what? Isn't there some other magic to making this happen? And there really isn't. So it's still very much, we're seeing kind of everything happen from kind of like a more buttoned up ESG perspective, which is all about kind of risk mitigation and reporting. Yeah. We're still seeing a lot of right. Like baby steps, truly. It's like 4 steps forward, 78 steps backwards. But anyway, don't get me started on that. I might get started on it. But, we're seeing the kind of like the corporatization of purpose and still in service of these, profits by any means kind of objectives. And I think that we just still have to kind of break free of that. But also remind ourselves that, like, especially to your point, Alana, in this day and age, purpose is actually a business driver, and we can tie it back to improved metrics and performance. And we have understandings of how that works. And I think there's still people that are like, I don't know, I just still want to sell these widgets for the lowest cost and get the highest return and make my shareholders happy. And that's it,
Right.
So I think that's my challenge.
If the budget's in the timeline,
it's real.
don't
right.
match up, then you're screwed. But
Then
it's nice to
you're
have purpose
screwed.
there too.
Right. As an afterthought, as a siloed, or it's the last thing in and the first thing to go. When it comes to budgets and when it comes to investments, but that's not to say there's a ton of great work happening kind of at brands across sectors, across the ecosystem, big and small. I'm really excited about what's going on in the startup world because especially here in LA, there's a really robust startup ecosystem that's just like inherently impact and purpose driven. So they're baking it into the DNA of their companies from jump. There's a ton of just founders that don't look like the stereotypical founders that we used to see in Silicon Valley that are actively trying to solve problems that they've been seeing in their communities for generations, and are raising money and capital and building really cool products to do that. So I'm always a huge fan of that. And so I'm keeping my eye on that space as well in terms of like what are some of the iconic brands of the future that are really impact driven.
Yeah, I love that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we jump into the campaign that you've brought us today, which we're very excited to go through, we want to quickly review our criteria for our listeners and for you as well, because it's helpful. So the first thing that we always look at is alignment.
Next is partnerships.
Call to action and transparency.
Engagement.
And lastly, optimization and amplification.
So on that note, since you were just telling us how excited you are about some of this amazing work that's coming out, why don't you, Lauryn, tell us about the campaign that you brought today that I know you had a personal hand in, but that you see is doing it well, and share a little bit about the creative with us.
Yeah. So one of my favorite brands that I've been honored to have a chance to work with here at Brand Citizens is Timberland. And they're an amazing brand for so many reasons, including, just an amazing product that they've developed. And I think just for a little bit of context, they are probably one of the most ambitiously thoughtful kind of sneaker brands that are thinking about things like regenerative materials and sustainability and circular materials and things like that. I mean, they're really cutting edge stuff, and they have there's a ton of fodder that they could leverage, to the world to tell everyone about, what they're doing around the sustainability piece. The problem is that they also are a brand that I guess it's not a problem. I would say an additional layer of context is that they're a brand that's also been really heavily, I would say, adopted by hip hop culture and young Black folks in urban centers who, use the boot as not only kind of a practical mechanism when you're, standing on a block in the middle of winter in the Bronx or in Brooklyn, but also because it's become this like really iconic thing across, the hip hop kind of culture, frankly, for the last, at least 35 years. And the reality is it's a New Hampshire-based company, that was family owned and run for a really long time. And, their initial, goal was to build these amazing boots that, you could sell to coal miners in like Appalachia, maybe, that could withstand, temperatures and, if you drop something on your foot. And so there was this disconnect between kind of who built the brand kind of in culture and then the work that was happening within the organization in order to produce this amazing product. And so one of the things too, before I go deep into the campaign is when I think of impact, it's easy to kind of think of impact in, numbers of dollars raised or number of trees planted. It's hard to think of impact again along the routes of like, again, how is this brand making something better in the world just by being in existence and by serving the consumers that they are, targeting. And so this campaign was really interesting to me because it really nods back to who this brand is all about. And so it's called Built for the Bold, and it's a campaign that has now kind of infiltrated a lot of their kind of marketing and branding, even some of their shoe lines. And it's really all about kind of paying homage to the folks that are these doers, these adventurers, and really nodding back to the folks in the community that really helped build the brand. Yeah. So I think that's the kind of background that I'll give for it. And then I don't know what to do next.
That's perfect.
So then,
that's a great setup.
Do you want to explain a little bit of how this was like put out into the world?
Sure.
For the components,
So so the components of the kind of launch of Built for the Bold was all about kind of celebrating folks who across the globe who had like kind of built this brand, and they call their kind of core consumer these doers, these adventurous doers who kind of live with passion, they act boldly, and that really resonates within the kind of copy and as well as the kind of initial campaign that they launched, I believe at the beginning of 2022, I want to say. And so the first kind of campaign is, well, I won't go through, but it has like Mary J. Blige, for example. It's got like Black and brown people that are like living in their everyday lives. One of the things that we talked with them about is how do we show up in the spaces and places that your consumers are. And then I think the beautiful thing is that they also recognize that they were coming up upon this 50th anniversary of not only their brand, but also of hip hop. How do we keep this campaign going so it doesn't feel like this one-off thing? Mm-hmm. And how do we make sure that this is baked into the look and feel of this brand? And how do we make sure it doesn't feel like, what? That doesn't feel Timberland. That doesn't feel like Timberland. So if you take a look at their Instagram account, probably over the last year or so, you'll see just the kind of the ways in which this Built for the Bold kind of continues to show up. It's highlighted every single place that they, have new products. When they're talking about their product line, they have an amazing documentary that's come out about the role of hip hop, but also kind of like, some of the kind of iconic hip hop album covers and what the boot meant to this community and what that means and coming from the voices of that community. So it was just a really awesome example of a brand kind of like stepping aside and letting folks speak for them, and also making a really bold decision to go and deepen their relationship with this community instead of taking what I think might be the easy way out of saying like, look at all our sustainable materials, when that's table stakes now. What's not table stakes is centering communities that have traditionally been left behind and forgotten, and giving credit where credit is due, and working with partners to make sure that that really comes to life. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Steph, do you want to kick us off into criteria?
Should we like take a second?
Yeah,
let's do it.
Okay.
Nice. I love it.
I will say I also appreciate that it's not, obviously they're all wearing Timberland, but that it's not like aggressively in your face. And it's like, I don't know. I'm also a sucker for anthem spots. I'm not going to lie. Like gets me every time.
Yeah.
But it's very well executed.
Yeah. And I figured it would be an interesting thing for this conversation because it is so different, and if you look at kind of a spot like that with an impact lens, I think it can kind of create a really interesting conversation, and we can talk about kind of like, the kind of aspects of the criteria and where they can continue to do more, potentially. So, yeah.
All the feels with this one. I love the voiceover. I love that it's Mary J. And, like bold is fearless and confident. It's also being brave enough to pick up and start again. Like,
okay. I'm like, I need to have that be my alarm.
That's inspiring all of us. We just need like the nighttime meditation. Should just bringing it all together.
Right? Every night,
before you go to bed, so that you wake up just ready to take on the world every day. Oh, how good would that be?
Like, thank you, Timberland. Thank you.
Yes,
amazing. All right, let's get into our criteria because I know we're going to touch on all of this. So, alignment. Is the impact aligned with the brand values and goals? I would say that's a solid yes. Just to be able to see and understand the context and the history that you've shared with us, Lauryn, about, what this company means and what this product means to hip hop culture, to the Black and brown communities, like just the iconicness of it all, and bringing in icons to tell this story. I love seeing it all come together.
Yeah.
And I was clicking around on their website and seeing, I mean, to your point, obviously you gave us this history, but it is also so clear on their website when you scroll down to their vision and it says, from the start, we used our products to solve problems. This dedication grew to solving problems for our community. So then continuing that with being able to inspire these communities and showing appreciation for these communities and change makers and inspiring the next set of change makers to be bold, I think is very cool.
Yeah.
So next, talent and influencer partnership.
Mwah.
What is the strength and alignment of partnership? Well, we clearly have a lot of partners involved in this one. Lots of talent.
Chef's kiss. The talent manager in me is like, yes, how many more people can we bring into this? This is amazing. No, but, obviously everybody from, now I lost the press release.
I was going to say, I admittedly am the worst at, I don't know who anybody is ever because I'm the worst culture consumer in so many ways. Like I just don't watch. Okay, my excuse is I have a 3-year-old. I wasn't great at it before, but like I really am not great at it now having a child. But in reading the press release, so I know who all these people are now. I know Mary J. Blige, don't you worry, the important one. But it's interesting that there's such a wide range of people, right? Rapper, producer, and Harvard guest lecturer, IDK, songwriter and poet Arlo Parks, auto body technician, Tegan Elise, musician, artist, and director Sugar, ceramicist, Chino Takeda, and marquee writer, world traveler, who's building hiking culture. Like, what interesting collection of people across different mediums.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, I feel like, I don't know if I imagine these people were all Timberland consumers to begin with, and it's not totally random. I don't know that for a fact, but I imagine they do their homework.
I think that's right. I remember working, closely with Drika as we were thinking about kind of like all of the strategy that would undergird a type of campaign like this. And we're just so proud of like this being the type of execution. And this is all credit to that team. They just get it, they really do. And they really want every single thing to be authentic. And I remember them talking about the creative and how they could leverage it and all these different facets and what it meant to have like real people behind each scene and each visual. I think it's really beautifully done, and it's kind of like if and it's like, oh, that's that's okay, cool. So I think that's important as well, to kind of have that authenticity, and stand apart from other brands, that people are used to having kind of these like soul catching kind of spots like this. It still feels different than a Nike or an Adidas spot.
Totally.
So yeah.
Amazing. This I wasn't clear on, so excited to dive in a little bit more, but was there a nonprofit partnership involved?
So I'm not entirely sure if there was a nonprofit partner with this particular spot, but I do know that in the additional kind of campaign work and additional spots additional work that they've been doing, they have partnered with the Christopher Wallace Foundation.
Nice.
So that's Biggie Smalls' foundation. That was a huge part of kind of wanting to make sure that the employees could kind of be involved in kind of like service. There's a huge service component to the Timberland kind of culture, which is awesome. So yeah, I think I know for sure that was like a huge part of like their overall goal and wanting to make sure that they're tapped into communities in a real robust way. So I can't say for sure if there was a nonprofit partner attached to this particular spot, but I know that's part of this larger Built for the Bold ecosystem that they've built, is making sure that it has its tentacles deep in the community and really meaningful.
That's fantastic.
I love that the intention around that too is to also have a way for employees to be connected to this conversation as well. And so it's not solely about consumer facing, but also doing the work internally and bringing your employees with you as well, which is something we also talk a lot about.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Steph, what were you going to say?
No, you nailed it, because that is one of our criteria as well. So it's really good to know that this was an opportunity to engage employees on a deeper level. And we are definitely curious about, what kind of monetary investment was made and like how Timberland is putting some money back into these communities, but it seems like that's part of their DNA as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that they are making a big impact.
Yeah. I don't have details on kind of like where they're at philanthropically with this particular campaign, but I do know for sure that it's a huge part of their DNA, both on financial contributions as well as like building the next generation of designers. And, you know, they do an amazing job every year bringing together a group of designers from all types of backgrounds, blended with AI and VR kind of capabilities to kind of reimagine, you know, the traditional boot in all these imaginative ways. And it's just like, it's just nice for brands to be dedicated to making sure that the folks behind the scenes are also coming from these communities as well.
100%. So, I mean, that's a huge part of it's again, almost to your point about the sustainability piece of it not being something that they should be going forward as table stakes. I think that is also something these days that should be table stakes, is you can't expect there to be diversity at the top if you're not building pathways. So by bringing in and acknowledging that you're serving these communities to be able to then help elevate and educate and train and give opportunity for these people to participate within the brand and hire them and work with them is just as important. And again, you don't need to talk about it, but the fact that you're doing it is so important.
Exactly.
Because it also seems, I mean, maybe a sidebar, but it also seems that so often when companies are leading with the message of like, oh, look how many diverse programs we have, or this employee hire, or this whatever, like, you're definitely kind of probably doing it a little performatively because you felt the need to let everyone know that you did it, which means you knew you weren't there before. So
exactly.
So having it,
that's always my takeaway.
through and through is so important.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like we kind of talked about this, the follow through, that this is a long-term campaign. Call to action. Would you say that there is a call to action, and is it obvious or subtle or even actionable? And would there be an opportunity to have a call to action? I mean, I guess Be Bold is a call to action in some capacity.
Be bold, buy Timberland shoes.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think this one has I mean, aside from the like, you know, the encouragement for me to have this as my like alarm clock every morning. I don't know if there was like a specific call to action, but I do think that it made us, to me, from my perspective, it really was a line in the sand as to how the brand was going to engage moving forward. And I think that there is this kind of demarcation kind of since this reveal that has demonstrated like a real tight alignment with showing up in this way for the brand or for the consumers of this brand in a way that's really thoughtful and just feels very tight and intentional. So, you know, and I think to your point too, Alana, like, I think, you know, there's some imagery of the product within, but I think they're, you know, and I'll say this is funny and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. Maybe I won't, I don't know. But one of the things in our pitch, and again, we were not the creative agencies that did this. We were super early strategy, very upstream. But one of the things that we put in our proposal deck when we were, you know, proposing to work with them was that we put a slide that had a Lil Wayne quote, and it said, "Real G's move in silence like lasagna." And our point there was, again, taking risks. Always taking risks. And we were like, look, like, you might need to step aside and let, you know, your product speak for yourself, your people speak for you, you know, this community speak for you. And so I think there's a little bit of that coming through too. I don't want to speak for them, and I like that, you know, I don't really want to be hit over the head. I know the value of this product. I'm like obsessed with their Instagram page. I'm proud to wear my Timberland boots, truly. And it's a conversation. I'm like, oh, I got these when I was working, you know, with our partner, you know, like, so like it was, you know, it's, you know, even personally, I appreciate the nod of like, okay, we are doing a lot of things right behind the
Yeah.
scenes, if someone were to peel back the curtain, you know, there would be alignment between what you see out in the world and what we're doing internally. And even having, you know, worked with an organization like ours demonstrates that they're really curious about, you know, how do we continue to focus in our efforts? How do we have criteria that dials up, you know, what is going to work and dials down what isn't, and really help them make that decision to go, you know, we're going to continue to pour into our community and not just wave this flag of like, oh, sustainability, because that's what everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
That's not like, that doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate. And it's great that we're doing it. But, you know, anyway, I could talk about this stuff all day long, but I do think there's a magic and beauty to the, like, I think they're moving in silence like lasagna in the boldest way possible, if that even makes sense.
Yes.
And to be fair, they do have plenty of other content on there. Sorry, I'm looking on the YouTube page now. That's in regards to nature and sustainability, and like it exists. So it doesn't need to be the lead campaign. If you really want to know more about it, you can go on and find, and you can see that there's so many different interesting like design partnerships and working with different talent and stuff as well, which is very cool.
Well, and what I love the most about this campaign, Lauryn, is that like you brought a piece of their identity to life, and a piece that they had embraced, but not really told the story of. And I think it's really powerful what y'all put together and what the end product ended up being. Truly.
Yeah, it's one of the it's a huge point of joy for us, because we typically don't get to then point to the creative that comes out, you know, based on the kind of strategy and recommendations that we give, because it's so far upstream. So you could have years of, you know, organizations trying to grapple with the strategy that you give them. And then, you know, 5 years later, you're like, oh, I think that's a little bit of what we said. But this was, you know, you're right. We were uncovering what was already there. You know, it was already there. They were a phenomenal team of humans. They wanted to understand, you know, how to better show up. And this is something we tell brands all the time. If you don't figure out how to kind of tell that story or help the folks that can tell that story better than you do that, then someone's going to tell it for you. They might not do it in the way that, you know, means is the best for your brand. And we're seeing that a lot, you know, now that consumers have just way more access to brands and the culture of companies and the people behind the brands. You can people make their own determinations of a brand, you know, with very little information nowadays. And so that's, you know, and that informs their decisions. And so, it was really cool to kind of like, help them uncover what was already there, and also have conversations around, you know, what's important for your business, and then what's important for your brand. Your sustainability efforts are paramount to you being an industry leader within this category. Is it something that resonates with your consumers? Maybe not, you know. If there's a different consumer base, or if you're a different type of company, then sure, you know, Patagonia leads with sustainability and environmentalism, and that's their whole thing. But they don't have the same relationship to hip hop that you do, nor does I would argue any other kind of brand, you know, has. And so you do have to think about like, you have to think about, you know, what is, you know, you have to have the engine running behind the scenes to make sure you're running a good business that is reputable and equitable and thoughtful. And you have to have a good set of, no pun intended, boots on the ground to make sure that, you know, your brand is doing what is in service of your consumer. And those, of course, have to interact. And I think that's the beauty, too, of the purpose and impact work that we do. We're always thinking about, like, what is good for this business? What is good for this brand? And what are the things that need to be forward facing, or what are the things that just need to be an engine behind the scenes? And you just have to always remember that anybody at any time could show up at your front door and want to look behind the curtain, and you don't want to get caught on your heels when that happens. Okay. So
don't want muddy boots.
Okay. You don't want muddy boots. You don't want muddy boots. I love this.
Oh my God.
Amazing. So, okay. Then let me ask you, Lauryn, if you had your way, what do you think a missed opportunity for good was here? If any. Was it flawless?
I know that's the whole point. I like totally missed the assignment here. No,
you're
I
good.
think, I mean, I think there could have been, you know, my big critique of a lot of campaigns typically is that this just feels like a moment in time. And one of the things that we're so adamant about is that every single thing has to be telling a larger story. Every single action has to be a chapter in a larger, in a book, in a collection, in the library, you know. And I think that now with, and then here's this other call to action, and then, you know, you kind of lose the essence of what you're trying to help people reimagine about your brand. And so I love this. I don't even want to call it a slow burn, because it's not. They've been like killing it. Everything they're putting out, all their products, I mean, just the collabs, I mean, it's really cool. And these are all chapters of a larger story that they're telling, that also speak to the work that they've done historically, you know, and also hold themselves accountable for the ways in which that they, you know, historically hadn't had that like even more seamless relationship to this kind of community that adopted them. So I don't know. I probably, I hate to say it, but I think it works. I don't know if there's, I don't know if it's flawless, but I think it, like, in the context of what it means to have a campaign that is now a new understanding of your brand and the work that it takes to maintain that and sustain that and get that feeling of affinity and alignment, it's hard work. And so I think they did an amazing job with this first piece. And I think if you take a look at the rest of their, like you said, a lot of their website and their Instagram and all their social channels, it just lives and breathes this in a way that I think is so sustainable and so sound. So
Brilliant.
I think,
I
also think, but to your point earlier as well, right? Like, the people who are purchasing these products are people who want to purchase from brands who have shared values. And so they would have been the first people to call out if they felt like this campaign didn't align with that brand's values.
Whack.
So the fact that it's a successful campaign and you're also not getting any blowback on any piece of it means that you are truly speaking and embracing your community, and they are on that journey with you. And so the work, right, is, as you said, carrying that forward and celebrating this 50 years, but also continuing forward with those values and leading with that, whether it's, you know, we have to pull back the curtain to see what's actually happening behind the scenes, but in the extra insight that you personally have, and us trusting that they are really doing that internal work and seeing all these different interesting partnerships that are on their page. And, you know, obviously we can dive deeper after we finish just for our own knowledge to look, but it sounds like there's a lot going on there. And it's interesting what you said too about the multiple call for actions, because I think there's also something, one of the first things that kind of came to mind, but it's also a little short-sighted, and maybe was only because we've seen a lot of other campaigns do this, is like, you know, be bold with these creators who are innovating. Like, yes, could you have had some sort of like innovation contest or like share your story and win a grant or whatever, but that is just a moment in time, right? And to be able to long-term actually employ these creators or employ these designers, employ these people and support them in their craft, in their journeys, without it having to be some sort of like promotional contest, I think is actually more meaningful. It might be harder on our side to like know what's really happening, but knowing that it's happening because, you know, I think is what also makes this really interesting and different, to your point. Because like on surface level, what I've originally seen, this has been like, oh, that's an impact campaign. No, not necessarily. So I think it is a really interesting choice to have brought us. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the behind the curtain insights.
Just a couple, you know, behind the scenes looks. And I think they're doing incredible. I think I love when you can see a brand that just knows it's doing good and doing right by humans. And I think and to your point, there are those campaigns, there are those contests, there are all those things are happening. And we had to, you know, one of the things that we were, you know, it's like, do you want to get credit for that? Or do you want to get credit for this really sustainable reimagining of what your brand means, you know? And I think that's the goal. That's what people want to get credit for. And I think, one of our favorite things to do as a team, even now, is we'll share memes where we see Timberland out in the wild, where it's like, there was a meme for a Thanksgiving Day parade with like a giant Timberland boot. I was like, you know, like, and it's just like, and we love it. And it's just, we just have such a love for that brand. And, selfishly, it was such amazing work that we, really refer back to as we think about kind of the value that we can add to additional clients. So yeah, I'm excited that we got a chance to kind of talk about it. I'm sorry I wasn't a little bit more critical, but
no, it's okay.
I'm a little bit biased.
But we also like highlighting the work that other people may have missed, showing what's different ways the brand's doing it well. And I think, again, to your point of really looking at what a brand is uniquely positioned to speak to, which it sounds like they really know what their voice is and where they are having an impact and who their consumer is and why they're needed in this market, what their problem is they're solving. So no, that was awesome.
Yeah. And look, this is another reason why Alana and I do what we do on this podcast is because we're not in the rooms that you're in. And so being able to really understand what the philosophy is behind this, what the calls to action were, what the purpose was, right? Like putting all those pieces of the puzzle together so that when we look at this ad, we can appreciate it all that much more.
And to help other brands and individuals understand everything that goes on behind
all the components
to get there, and also what's possible.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't have to be, slap a ribbon on it, slap a flag on it.
Slap a nonprofit on it.
Like all the things that very clearly don't work anymore. So yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Lauryn, so much for joining us. Where can folks learn more about you and your work?
Ooh, so you can check out our website, brand-citizens.com. You can find me on Instagram at Lauryn, LAURYN .Nicole, NICOLLE. LinkedIn, I guess. I'm just Lauryn and Nwankpa. So yeah, you can find me on my socials. This is so fun, you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauryn. Let's shine a light and learn from those who are doing it well and reduce the missed opportunities for good.
We want to hear from you. Let us know. What campaigns are you seeing that are doing it well? Who would you like to see us interview? And what campaign would you like us to audit?
Thank you so much for joining us on our mission to revolutionize the industry that we love.
Missed Opportunities for Good is a production of Aligned for Impact and Love of Good.